Hello, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives in Practice, a leadership development interview series hosted by Break the Norm Leadership. I'm your host, Rachel Saathoff, and today I'm here with Jessie Su, a DEI advocate. Welcome, Jessie. How are you today?
Good, how are you? Thank you, Rachel. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm great. So, Jesse, I would love to just kind of start with talking about your leadership origin story, like where it all kind of began, for you.
Yes, yeah. So moving to the US 12 years ago, I always wear this sort of labels like, immigrant, minority, women. So my leadership style, I would say like it's more like open space for others, be considerate for others and inspire others. So really like I would say a lot of times whenever I work with somebody, I can always put myself in their shoes and then think about how I can better support them, what their struggles are, how I can make the space for them and then make this works environment more accessible for each other.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Would you say that empathy is maybe one of your like leadership superhero powers?
Yeah, yeah, like empathy. I would say like personality wise, like I always feel empathetic for others, like always want to make sure that I understand others' struggles, how I can be more helpful for them to be successful at workplace and also I always be mindful about what's going on in their personal lives, whether I can be supportive at work in order for them to take care of what's going on in their personal life. Just having that empathy really helps me to uh, be in a very good relationship with people who I lead and I work with.
Yeah, no, I think that is an amazing like superpower because so often when you talk about leadership development, like everybody is always talking about like raising your EQ, having more empathy for
Yeah,
others.
hear you. Yes.
So for that to be like a skill that comes natural to you,
Hmm.
is so amazing. So how would you say you stay brave and authentic in an environment that, is sometimes not fully understanding of some of the unfortunate labels that have been put on you, woman,
Hmm.
person of color, immigrant. Like how have you stayed brave and optimistic and authentic with all of that?
Yes, I would say first of all, I appreciate and really grateful for a community I have around me who are supportive. Like just support myself, support a lot of women who are like me, minority, immigrant, or sometimes they may not be immigrant, but like maybe they are first generation or second generation. We have a small community that people support each other. Sometimes we share our struggles in that community. So that gives me a lot of courage to be authentic, even though I know being authentic a lot of times may actually bring more struggles for myself, but I always firmly believe that we have to be authentic and be confident about who we are, and then continue to build a path for everybody who are like me and then for people, even like younger generations, our, like next generations who make sure that, when they are older, when they are in the workforce, they don't have to face the same challenges as we do nowadays. So really, I appreciate, like a smaller community, that's around it for myself. The other thing I would say, just keep telling myself that we are unique. Like seriously, I feel like we always have this um, different background, but we can always bring a different perspective and a valuable perspective to the table. We just need to firmly believe that, what we bring to the table is valuable for the work we do and also valuable for the whole community. So just keep that in mind really helps me to, move forward and then move along with people who are different from me or who are close to me or yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Because I think a lot of times when people are talking about like diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're thinking more about, just like skin color, race, ethnicity, things like that, or just generational things. They're
Hmm.
not thinking about, well, what is the perspective that you bring to the table?
Yes,
Because there
yeah,
could be two people of color, like two Asian women, like the two of us, but our background, our experiences, our culture, like can completely be different in like how
yes.
we look at something, our perspective, how
Yes.
we solve a problem, or just look at anything in life.
Hmm. Great, great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Really, like after I moved to the US during the past 12 years, I appreciate, being in a place that I got to meet a lot of people who like have different background, like culturally background or like a different, even like people who are from a different state, their stories are so different, and then we always inspire each other. I think it's a very unique experience for me being in Baltimore. And then there are not many Asian people in Baltimore in this area, but I appreciate that the city is actually very open to diversity, and I appreciate the different perspectives. So far, yeah, I appreciate that overall in the community is welcomed all these different ideas, and yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome because it just made me think of I was in Baltimore I don't know, like a year ago, and it was like summer,
Yeah,
and I wasn't the driver. Somebody else was driving my car, and I had a couple passengers with me. And I just like look over, and there's an Asian woman there, and her
yeah,
car had broken down. And we were at a red light, and I was like, guys, we have to stop and help her.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we're gonna like help this like random person on the side of the road. And I was like, when is the last time you've seen an Asian person besides me in my
Yes,
car? We're
yes,
coming.
yeah.
And
Yes,
we ended
yeah.
up
See,
like
like,
helping like push her car to the side and
yes, yeah. Oh,
yeah, it made me just think of that like random story because yeah, definitely in Baltimore, like you are definitely the minority um
yes.
in the community.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that you have shared with me in the past that, in your last couple jobs, you have really made like a strong emphasis to kind of help better incorporate like cultural celebrations,
Yes.
cultural understanding, and kind of helping create inclusive environments. So can you share a little bit more about the work that you have done with these companies?
Yes, yeah. So I'm in this education industry, like always work with students, different ages. But like one thing I always believe is that we really need to build a more inclusive environment. Like no matter what age students are, this is so important for their well-being, actually. A lot of times our students from different like they may be a different like ethnic groups or where like have different background cultural background, so how we can support and then show our appreciation of different cultures, that's so important. So during the past works I have lots of like initiative projects that supporting students to celebrate their cultural heritage and also promote cultural awareness wherever I work. It was well received, and also it was a great opportunity for our students to show their cultural. Um, how to say, like, to show that they are proud of their own identity, they are
Yeah.
proud of their own culture, and also a lot of times I believe that if we understand each other better, it will just make a lot of things easier, and then the whole world, I guess, it will be much peaceful than now. It's really a challenging time. So I'm very grateful that I can be part of this process, creating a lot of meaningful ways or a lot of meaningful projects to promote this.
Yeah. What would you say was the business case that you took to leadership when you were like, we need to do more of this, and this is why we need to do this, and this is like how it will benefit the organization?
Yes, I remember when I worked at for like a private schools partnerships, I realized a lot of the private schools, they had international students or like they have students who didn't really grow up in that private schools area, may have a different cultural perspectives. And then they had those students, they claim that they support students 100%, but they didn't even recognize the students' important holidays, like for example, Diwali, Lunar New Year, you name it, those important celebrations, occasions where they just didn't do anything, and then they didn't even recognize that it's part of their schools agenda. Like, they celebrate all sorts of like a traditional American holidays, but they wouldn't even have the time on their school calendar to celebrate those holidays for the minoritized group. So I brought this up to the school management. I also brought up to the company I worked for, who supported those schools with recruitment and then the students management. Um, I remember it was a challenging time because, like I was kind of like representing students, and also I feel like I represented myself too because I came from the same background as lots of our students who I served at that time. And then eventually, yes, it was not like lots of conversation were not that pleasant, but the goal and the outcome was good because the company supported my ideas and then eventually talk with those schools. So those schools had more like a just a yeah even like a simple basic celebration or recognition of those students cultural background and important holidays in the newsletter or in the broadcast. It's just students really appreciate that, and actually their own local domestic students appreciate the opportunity to get to know other cultures. And then we had host families supporting students. They heard about this and then they said, "Oh, thank you so much for letting us know so we can better prepare and then celebrate together with the students." So I feel like, yes, like I appreciate that opportunity that eventually we create a better space for everybody and then for people to grow and understand each other well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I love that you kind of brought that up because it just makes me, I think, wonder or curious or like, what is your opinion on, sometimes we learn about other cultural celebrations, things like that, where our organization is recognizing it. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we don't know very much about it. What
Yeah.
would you like advise somebody on like best practices or respectful practices on how to learn about other cultural celebrations without always going and finding the Chinese person or the Indian person and saying like, tell me about your celebration. Like what do you
Yeah.
advise people on how to be respectful and mindful to learn that, but then also
Mm-hmm.
respectful and mindful ways to like show that you're respecting and honoring that celebration.
Yes, yeah. I would say actually like I always appreciate that, like people who are different from me are curious about my culture. I mean, it's a good sign. No, I feel like they are curious. That means like they want to learn more. They are care about this. Um, the way they ask sometimes could be like not the pleasant way, but I just feel like they come from a good heart, and then I will just let them know what's the right questions to be asked in the future, like what's the best practice. I will bring like some resources, but I think overall is if institute or organization can have sort of some like we call it some like a staff council, like of people who volunteer to be there to share different cultural perspectives. That will be helpful for the people who ever work for them later, and then create this space first, and then before people complain like, oh, I wish this company can have best practice, or I think just be proactive and then have those resources ready will be very helpful.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. For sure, for sure. Like, I think even just like you kind of brought this up a little bit, and I know Break the Norm has done this a little bit.
Yeah.
When like even with America, like we're still starting to figure out how to celebrate like Juneteenth even. Like
Yes. Yeah.
such a new federal holiday for us. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are just like, well, I have the day off. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. Like, am I supposed to
Yeah.
cook out? Am I supposed to go somewhere? Am I
Mm-hmm.
supposed to like, am I supposed to honor in a specific way? So
Yeah.
I've found like this last year for us, even just like sending out a newsletter or sending out a
Yes.
social media post that can, just create awareness of it and like
Yes. Yeah.
give like tips or tricks to like how to celebrate or how to honor the holiday, I
Yeah.
think is really important. What would you say are, just with some of our holidays coming up, what would you say are some of in your culture would be some of the most important holidays you would like recognized and celebrated
Mm-hmm.
within your organizations?
Yes. Yeah.
Share a
Like,
little bit about them.
yeah, like Lunar New Year for sure is the most important holiday. And then I know like in the area I live, they actually the public school system, they since last year I think they started to have this day off for students, even though they haven't actually put it on the calendar, say this is a Lunar New Year, so we have the day off. They use that day for like teachers' professional day. So actually like students can have they don't need to go to school that day. Um, for us, we really think is a big progress,
Yeah.
even though they haven't officially recognized the holiday. But it's a big progress. At least they have the day off. It's the same with like Diwali in my school district that they didn't really say that on the calendar, but they have the day as a teacher's professional day. It's a I just feel like it just takes more time, unfortunately, for the whole society to really recognize my cultural, like our cultural, heritage or the cultural celebrations. But at least it's moving forward. And then at the workplace, I always make sure that we create a space for everybody. Before each calendar year, we always make sure that one is the important holidays for different ethnic groups. So we
Yeah.
put it on the calendar and make sure that we have important celebrations for those days. It just we need to be mindful. We also need to remind others to be open-minded and then remember those important holidays for your colleagues.
Yeah, and I think right now is a perfect time for organizations to consider sending out those like surveys to people of like what are the
Yes.
important celebrations to you that we want to make sure and honor, whether it's, just in your team, your department, your whole organization. Uh,
Yeah.
what are those days that are important to you and
Yes.
they should be mindful of to, give you space or give you more love or give you,
Yeah.
whatever that is, to be mindful of that. Like, I think the end of the year is always when we like start collecting our data for how we're
Yeah.
going to improve for the next year.
Yes. Yeah. I see or I also heard like some companies sending out this survey, like DEIB related service, asking their staff how how they feel about the whole environment at the company, like whether they feel some struggles there or what's the issues they observe, and then how the company can do better. So all of this, I think, is a great progress. Like, at least they recognize there are some feedbacks that they need to collect from their own staff or employees that they need to improve in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to share with an organization that is, maybe watching this and they're like, okay, we want to be more inclusive of these cultural things. What would you like? They can't change all of it like at once, right? So, what
Yeah.
would you say are like the first two or three like action steps that they could take that would help them kind of start moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I would say first of all, if they can have some like task force committee, like those small community consisted of their own employees. That's a very good starting point. Like people volunteer their time and then want to work together using their own time to make this whole place better for everybody. That's very important. Second thing is, I would say they may want to, like start with a survey and then come up with some questions first and then send some survey, gather some feedback from their own employees, how they can make it better. And then third thing is I would say like just to bring this, maybe do like a feedback constantly checking with the employees, not like, oh, I do this end of the year and I won't do it again. Make sure that they revisit and then checking with employees on a timely manner and then receive like feedback from the employees, like gather collective like authentic
Mhm.
feedback or that's very important. I think that's a good starting point. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to make just a friendly amendment to what you said about the task force because I love the idea of a task force. However, it needs to be paid. Like
Oh yes, yes,
it
yeah.
needs to
That's
be
right. That's
paid or
right.
it needs to be part of somebody's job description
Yep.
that
Yeah. Oh
they are
yes.
part of this, that their
Yes. Yeah.
time is not volunteer because
Mm,
usually organizations
yeah.
are going to go to the marginalized community and say, who wants to volunteer and do extra work to help us be
Yes, I
more
appreciate that,
inclusive?
Rachel. Yes, yeah, that's a very important point. Yes, that's right. That's right. Yes, yeah. Great.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Learning that from you.
So
Yes.
it needs to be something that we don't just go to the Asian people and say, hey, Asian people, we want to celebrate your holidays. We would now want you to work
Work
10
on
extra
something.
hours a week, like on this task force,
Yes,
but we
yeah.
don't actually want to pay you for it. So, like,
Hmm.
that's just my friendly amendment is that,
Yes, definitely.
it's paid time if your organization is, making these steps forward and
Yeah, yeah.
helping support the mission and organization because
Hmm.
the organization is going to benefit from this task force.
Yes, yeah,
So the people
absolutely.
involved need to be compensated for the organizational wide change
Yeah.
that's going to happen because, they could recruit new employees because they're like, hey, we have this task force that does these
Hmm.
things to be more inclusive in our organization type thing.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Great. Yeah.
yeah. So love it, love it, love it. Um, yeah. So when putting together like some of these surveys that you were talking about, what questions might somebody consider including? How long should these surveys be? Should they be given to all staff, some staff? Like, what is your opinion on the best way to like, I don't know, collect clean data?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely open to all the employees. It's not like we just want on the certain groups ideas, just everybody, because everybody is part of this, creating a inclusive environment. It's just not like some minorities doing their own work or yeah, it's just I really think is needs to open to everybody. Uh, and then usually for the first round of survey, I would say like some short questions or some multiple choices with like two or three open-ended questions. That would be helpful. But I think maybe like by case, if we do see some feedbacks from certain employees, I think it's worth like maybe another follow-up just if people are willing to share more about their experience or their suggestions, I think definitely worth another follow up.
Yeah. How important do you think it is for these task force and these surveys and things like that to be driven by leadership and by the mission and strategy of the organization?
Yeah, I always think this should be like creating a more inclusive environment should be on every organization's mission. Like we, no matter what industry we work in, the end goal is we want to make this world better place to live, right? So really, I think they should be part of the mission. So no matter what they do, for example, like healthcare, even finance, like we always need to make sure that what each company does eventually will help this society in a different way. But so it's just so important to keep that in mind. So I think the leadership should always have those in the mission statement, or I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, definitely. Like I've definitely heard of times where organizations have done kind of like, I don't know, competitions where they include different things like inclusivity into their core values, into their mission,
Yeah.
and then recognize staff when they are like being an example of this specific core value within the organization and
Hmm.
representing that core value, especially with like inclusivity. Like that's like our
Yeah.
number one at Break the Norm, like inclusivity, then collaboration are like our number one and two for our like core values and norms and mission.
Hmm.
But also with us, it's coming from the top. It's coming from
Yes, coming from the
strategy,
top.
it's
Hmm.
coming from our values, from everything that we do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Hmm.
So I would ask, what challenges have you faced advocating for cultural understanding and celebration, like in past roles, and how have you overcome some of those challenges?
A lot of challenges. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, just like people always do this, what's it called, like microaggression. They didn't even realize that they didn't say something appropriate to people who are, like from different culture or um just I think we do have a long way to go to make overall like, people around us to just be mindful and then also um be open-minded, be like where this like raise this awareness is very important. A lot of people don't even know that it's very authentic for a certain group people or so unfortunately I see this case lots of times, and I think as you said, like really from the top, like the leadership needs to create this space for everybody, um and it needs to have, like sometimes I know like some institute have small groups, say like diversity and inclusion committee, but they just feel like, oh, that's the work the community needs to do, but it doesn't really affect the whole environment, which didn't really work well. I think like the senior leadership really needs to make sure that from top down is like all levels and really need to understand how important it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, learning how to call out and call in when you're
Yeah.
experiencing these microaggressions and, helping marginalized people just kind of grow in their confidence to be able
Yes.
to call out or call in,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think is super important. Have you seen many organizations kind of focusing on training that helps support these things? Like, even if you're not the person being harassed, like if you're a bystander, watching it happen, like still having the
Hmm.
knowledge of that
Yeah.
to be helpful. Have you
Yes.
seen a
Yeah.
lot of organizations kind of doing some of that training?
Yeah, I definitely see lots of organizations doing that. And I know lots of organizations have their own like employee resource group, like affinity based, which is very important to have a platform for people to gather together, share their experience and concerns, and then bring it out to the whole organization. And then that, because I'm also thinking about doing like a launching an Asian ERG at the workplace at the place I work for. I think it's so important to have that platform. And also that platform is not just helping people like us, it's also helping the whole organization to understand each other better. So definitely I saw like more and more guest speakers from our community are invited to speak at different organizations, or like leadership coach are invited to give like webinar or give a talk at some companies to bring this awareness to the whole organization, which are also always great to see. All I think is really a great progress. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you started an ERG before?
I never started at ERG, but I have lots of friends who work at some companies that they have ERG. I attended events that hosted by those ERGs. I have my ideas on what I would like to, once I have this ERG, what programs we should bring on, and then, but always looking forward to collaborate with other ERGs from other organizations.
Yeah.
I think it's just so important, especially during like a challenging time. We really need to uh go together and so we can go stronger.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I just, keep seeing more and more Asian, especially Asian women, kind of
Yes.
coming towards me, kind of saying, "Hey, what can I attend? What can I go to, uh,
Yeah.
to support, and just feel supported,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not in my organization, but like
Yeah.
just in a community of, business professionals."
Mm-hmm.
If you were
Yes.
to give one piece of advice to leaders who are hesitant about incorporating more cultural celebrations in the workplace or, ERGs or different things, what advice would that be?
Uh, I would say like why they hesitate, like right? What's the mental block? Why they don't think it's necessary, or it's just I feel like it's a naturally to it makes sense, right, to add this on on their agenda. But like yeah, I'm just curious, like what's the mental block? And also I would say like maybe talk to your organization, right? If they hesitate, like they need to find some solutions, right? Or suggestions that talk to us and then let us know how we can help. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I love this. I love this. And then, what I'm curious, just in your leadership journey, did you have like mentors or sponsors that kind of
Yeah.
have helped support you as a woman of color that is, growing, in a leadership role now? Like, what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, I do have mentors who are so supportive for my like a career growth, or sometimes like yeah, like when they're one of my mentors has similar background, like we didn't grow up in the US, we came from like Asian countries, came here for school and then settled here. Really like I think we understand each other's struggles very, very well. In terms of like career growth, moving to leadership role, we understand each other's challenges very well. She's very senior, like she has more years leadership experience than me. And then of course, like whenever I bring something up, say like, oh, I have these struggles, even though sometimes I don't even finish the whole sentence, but I think she just you can tell like she knows what you're gonna talk about because she experienced the same thing before. So I'm very grateful to have mentors like this that has shared like a similar experience with me. I think for women minority, we really need to find, like mentors, and also like if lucky enough, then if we can have sponsors, that would be wonderful. I think for myself is I really want to help more people. I want to help people like me. I'm happy to, share my experience or support them in any way I can. I think we cannot be stronger if we don't help each other, especially for women. Like just if we don't help each other, then who will help us to be more successful? So really, just very natural for me to have that passion to like mentor others, and then share my personal struggles, what mistakes I did before. But all like success is based on like all like compile, is that the right word, like a pile of mistakes.
Mhm.
I would love to share that with whoever would love to hear, and then it's just yeah, very important to support each other.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of the business case for ERGs is, that
Yeah.
mentorship, that sponsorship.
Yes.
Finding people that can advocate for you, but then also can understand your struggles. Like I'm
Yes. Yeah.
38 years old and I just found my first Asian woman mentor like a couple
Oh,
months ago.
congratulations. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I met her and I was like, oh my gosh, will you mentor me?
Yeah. Oh,
And she's
yes.
like,
Yeah.
well, what does that mean? And I was like, I don't know. You're just like the first person that has ever been in my industry that understands the good, the bad, the indifferent, the struggle, whatever,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
has relatable experiences. And so
Yes.
it's a really like just defining moment for me of, in the past, I've never really I don't know. I just kind of like things happened, I brush it off and I move on. But I didn't really
Mm,
realize the power, the emotional power, I guess I would say it would be just knowing that there is someone else that looks like me, has similar experience as me,
yeah.
that can
Yes. Yeah.
relate to me. I just didn't
Hmm.
realize the power in that. And so
Yeah.
it was really a great experience for me.
Yes, yeah. So actually, I appreciate what your organization does. It's really like helping the whole community and helping the society, right? Like, yeah. So kudos to you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Jesse, for coming on, for sharing your journey and your leadership insights. It's been a pleasure hearing about your experiences and your lessons. And, I know that your wisdom is just going to impact so many people through just this interview.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel. Great to know, grateful to get to know you and then be part of this interview.
Yeah, and for all of our viewers, if you enjoyed Jesse's insights today, don't miss other Break the Norm leadership interviews. And if your organization is interested in learning more about how Break the Norm leadership can help you develop your greatest asset, your people, click the link below.
Great.
Thanks so much, Jesse.